great to see you. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since the last album. And
Yeah, indeed, yes.
it seems that you didn't rush with this one album. I think that you are at the stage of your career when you don't have to rush and release albums every second year. You can just take your time, right?
I hope so. I mean, it's been one of the biggest fights for Moonspell. It's to be masters of our own time and our own music. And it's always been a bit like this. We were very stubborn. And personally, I think that the rush, as you rightfully said, and the agenda of playing 2 years on the road, then having a new album, and then go back, as we say, on the album cycle, the touring cycle. It's something that is crushing bands' creativity. So we decided to gain our time. We decided to go very old school on this one, wait to be inspired, wait for the muse, taking our time, choosing our direction carefully. And of course, we did a lot of things in between: the Wolfhard 30 Years tour, the orchestra shows, the Opus Diabolicum album. But I think in the end of the day, this was just also a strategy to gain ourselves time. Our label, Napalm Records, was very understandable about it. I have to say they were incredibly comprehensive when it came to take our time. And I think it's a great thing. It's a sensation of freedom, it's a sensation of independence, and also of waiting for the right time and the right music. And I think that shows in the album. It shows the band that it's totally renewed, totally on top of their game, going into very familiar territory by our own decision. So we're very, very happy that this time between Hermitage and Far From God, we had to put this time in for the band and to reach a result like we did in Far From God.
Yeah, and I think that all the ingredients are there. I mean, this album is not too long, not too short. It has heavy elements, soft elements, dark elements, and I think that's also something you have to have time to think about because you don't want to overdose, right?
Yeah, I think for the first time, the last song is called Reconquista, which people know as a historical fact that we were gaining territory from the Muslim population back there in the Christian Reconquista days. But for us, that song is not a historical song. It's symbolic of Moonspell gaining ourselves, our trust, our confidence in our skills. So to speak, even though, I mean, I spoke about our influences at large in the past, but I think this album, the influences are there, but it's an album that we look upon ourselves as Moonspell as being the main influence, really. Because as you say, there's a mixture between a little bit of all of our style. It's not a mixture between all the albums, because some albums, some music we did was probably a bit too experimental, and it made sense at the time. But I think the ingredients, as you said, they all came from the Moonspell warehouse or kitchen. Let's call it this way. And I think it's very personal. And it's rewarding, more rewarding than awards or sales or golden records. It's the thing that we have our own sound today. And if people read my interviews when I was younger, there was always the ambition for Moonspell. We can go a bit more metal, we can be a bit more gothic, but that's the foundation of our music, really. And we wanted to be very close to that feeling, not repeating any album of the past, because I think everybody knows it's impossible. Those albums were done in a different time. We were different people, we had different influences, and also the people who listened to it back then, they were different. Our lives were different. I think our lives were happier, even if the world was not such a complicated place as it is in 2026. But yeah, I think time is an issue that we really have, especially when you have 33 years old band like Moonspell is. I think that we have to manage really well our music and our expectations and our time, especially. So I'm not afraid to say that after Hermitage and all the pandemics and the fact that not being on tour for a while, it kind of, how can I say, we kind of lost we had a kind of existential crisis, because we were a legacy band already, because we have Wolfart, we have Religious. Wolfart was 30 years in 2025, Religious 30 years, sorry, in 2026, and Sin will be 30 years in 2028, if I'm not mistaken. So we could entertain the idea of becoming a legacy band. We also thought about it. Why make new music? For whom? And for what purpose? So that was the first question that we had in our minds. And to provide ourselves with a relevant question and to go to the studio again and to go through all the motion that is to make a new album with all the doubts we have. Can I write lyrics again? Can I do new songs? Can I sing again another album? It's our fourth in studio album. And then time said, yeah, you can. You just have to, wait for the right moment. And that right moment came. And then it was very fast. We already had many ideas from the past, but then the 8 songs we chose, we had more songs, but like you said, we didn't want to put a lot of songs on the album. Actually, even curiously, because I love vinyls and I collect LPs, and sometimes I'm very annoyed when I have to get up, and put the second album to the rest of the album. So I said, I just want the 45, 50 minutes maximum album, like the old school albums. I mean, there's even shorter albums like Raining Blood and D-Side and Samael, Ceremony of the Opposites. So we wanted to go there too. And I think it was nothing like really planned. It was just letting the muse coming and going and feeling ourselves good about it, because that was really right now the most important thing about this album is for us to be meaningful, to do new music again, and it's going great. The first single had a smashing response, and let's see what happens with the rest of the album.
Absolutely. And you mentioned your inspirations. Did you search your inspirations in literature, in poetry, in culture?
All the time. I mean, that's why I'm in Moonspell, to be influenced by not only music but by art and literature in particular. I read a lot of stuff. I'm always reading. I'm always reading 1 or 2 books. That's my happy place. That's my favorite place. As you know, I write too, poetry and novels, and obviously the Moonspell lyrics. And also I have a Substack blog that I write in there. And it's through books and through contact with other forms of expression that I kind of get the Moonspell feeling. Actually, one of the main inspirations to get this more gothic romance going again was Nosferatus by Robert Eggers, the movie. It's been a while since I watched vampire movies. I thought they were really going into the Hollywood cliche. They were horror movies. They were not romantic movies. There were youngster movies like Twilight, etc. So I kind of got cold about it. I think the vampire became a caricature of such a literary character, and such a troubled man, such a misunderstood man, a man looking for love, a man that was quiet in his Hungarian-Romanian border, and then someone killed his wife, and all hell breaks loose. So, and when I saw Robert Eggers, when I sat down to finally see the movie, I've seen Robert Eggers movies like The Lighthouse. I know he was very gothic on his approach, but I loved the movie. Because why? Because it had two main ingredients that for me make a great movie. It was love and pain, and obviously retribution, revenge. It was very well filmed. And it kind of made me want to write another vampire song, which I haven't done since ages, because I thought it was a bit silly, really. And I didn't want to write something like silly. I wanted to write something deep. And that's where Far From God comes too, because as you know, we see vampires as bloody beasts, but once in their lives, they were fearful to God, they were faithful to God, and there's rebellion, like you see in the Bram Stoker essential book for the characterization of the modern vampire. And obviously, I read a lot of romantic stuff like Baudelaire poems that I used more for the shape of the lyrics. A lot of English poems, to a lot of books that had love and pain as main ingredients, because I didn't want to make a social album. I respect all the bands that are interventionist about the war and about society, and I agree with them. War sucks, and there's many people in power that shouldn't be there in the first place. But also, I think that at least myself and a lot of like-minded people are tired of bands telling them what to do, what to wear, how to be placed in the Israel-Palestine conflict and Ukraine and Russia. And it's a lot of confusion, it's a lot of noise. And I felt like I had to make music that helps people to break out of that cycle. Music that it's not political, music that is romantic. I think there was the high time for Moonspell to do that. And I have to say, without false modesty, that we can do very good music like this. If we set ourselves, we can make this dark fantasy world very genuinely available to people. So yeah, it was a question of just contacting with. It was a very artistic process. I have to say, it's not that I consider myself an artist. I mean, maybe in the past. Now I think it's too much, to consider like a metal musician. Or we are all artists, etc. No, we're just lucky people. With Moonspell, we live the dream of being a Portuguese gothic metal band that actually lives from this since the 90s, that still is here, putting up a struggle, having interviews, talking with the fans, playing shows. So I feel that this privilege that I have has to be honored with music that is also comforting to people. And one of the things that people that have so far just listened to the first single, they like it because it's simple. It's not technical. There's a room for that. It's not metalcore with all this complex. It's just a song, and people were very happy about it, and so was I.
Yeah, the Far From God is a great single, great song. Funny you mentioned the Nosferatu by Robert Eggers, because I remember when this movie was coming out, I was doing interview with Danny Field, and he's a big
All right.
vampire buff, and we
Yeah.
both agreed that this is a great movie, but we also agreed that the original Nosferatu from the 1922 or 23
Yeah.
aged really, really well, and after a century, it's still a great movie.
Yeah, Murnau was a great director. I love Nosferatu. I visited the castle in Slovakia where it was recorded with Max Schrenk. And then I also watched Herzog Nosferatu with Isabella Gianni. And I also watched Shadow of a Vampire with Willem Dafoe, which is about the recordings of Nosferatu, because it was the 20s, so they had to transport through a mountain and everything was very scary. I just been in that castle. But Murnau was a great director, hands down. His German phase with Nosferatu, with Faust, which is a brilliant movie too, about the myth of Mephisto and Faust. And then when he even had to run away and emigrate to the States, he has a beautiful movie called Sunrise. So that was cinema. But believe me, I think the Robert Eggers movie kind of cracked a certain apathy in the vampires movie. For instance, a lot of people hated the Jean-Luc Besson movie, Dracula, a love story. And I kind of loved it. I love the actor. Of course, there's a lot of silly stuff with the gargoyles, etc. But I think the story is very well told because it's made in a surrealistic vibe that reminds me of Niels Jordan's Company of Wolves, which is a great movie. Too very colored, very surreal. So I think that nowadays, not only through books but also through movies that come from books, obviously, I'm very looking forward to the Werewolf by Robert Eggers and all these classics being revamped, because I think the classics will always be classics, and I want to be on the right side of history here. So I want to make a classic album too, because I think nowadays, with social networking, with AI, etc., those are all powerful tools that I use myself to sell my products, to say where the shirts are available, which editions, because that's a way of communicating, but that's not really a source of inspiration. To me, it's more of a tool. It's not an archetype. If I can call it this way. So I think that the classics are gifts that keep on giving, really. So if you reread the books, if you rewatch the movies, there's a certain magic about it, which is much more than nostalgia. I mean, for instance, it was just Easter, and I watched Cleopatra, Ben-Hur, Ten Commandments, and those are great movies because it's the history of the West too, how we are built, what are our fears, what are our ambitions, why are we evil, why can we be capable of good too. And I think that's those are the only things that matter in when the songwriting and lyric writing. Really, it's this dilemma of the humankind. Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, I noticed your Ingmar Bergman t-shirt, so I guess you are a fan
Mhm.
also of Swedish classic
Oh,
movies.
there's yeah, it's this is from The Hour of the Wolf, which is reputed to be his only horror movie. It's very psychological. It's very great, and obviously, I love The Seventh Seal. I would like to do something with that. I love the aesthetics. I love Max Sido. Actually, I watched the greatest story ever told with Max Sido as Jesus too. And Bergman is just a director I keep coming back to, you know. But also, even for the video of Far From Gods, I Pavel was the director. He has a company called Film. He does a lot of stuff, Garia, Amon Amart, a lot of bands. And I just contacted with him and I said, I want a black and white video. And those are my references from Murnau to Bergman to Eisenstein to Ivan the Terrible and Alexander Nevsky and all of that. I think it was really an amazing time for cinema because those things were very epic. They had no CGI, they had no artificial intelligence. Everything was done by hand, and I like very much that feeling. I watch a lot of modern movies too, but sometimes I just want to see gaslighting. The 40 movies or some
Mm.
old movies because you know it's just it was just a different world and I don't want to lose connection with that world.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to your album, like as we mentioned, this is really well balanced album, but one of my favorite tracks, hands down here, like I already love it, is The Great Wolf in the Sky. It's so eerie,
Yeah.
it's so dark, so like tell me more about this track.
Well, it was one of the first songs that we made. You know, I wanted to write another Wolf song, but I didn't want to make it like the new Wolf bands, let's call it this way, because the vampire and the wolf have a deep, deep meaning and place on the Moonspell pantheon. You know, our first album was called Wolf Art. It was one of the first bands, not the first, but one of the first bands to make this connection. Nowadays, there's even a band called Wolf Art, some friends of mine from Finland.
Mm.
You know, so I wanted to go to a character in the lyrics that was my first idea was a wolf that lives in the stars, you know, like a constellation. Like instead of a bear, it's made like a wolf. And it started to be a song about brotherhood, about getting together, about having someone who takes care of us up there that is not a god or a Satan, but a wolf. So a god wolf, let's call it this way. And then when we were doing the song and when we recorded it, we had a friend and a fan who died, Pedro, and we dedicated this song to him because even though it was not written of obviously thinking about his death because he was still alive when we were recording the album. When I went into the funeral and met his widow and her daughter, I said to myself, I'm going to dedicate this song for him because he was a kind person. He was from the same neighborhood as me, so he knows Moonspell since we were very young and making a lot of noise in the neighborhood with the black metal days. And the song had this closing attitude, this praising attitude that I think the guys Ricardo and Pedro really went there with the music too, because the keyboards, even though they are keyboards, they sound like a cosmic wolf. Let's call it this way. And the song has a very nice flow. And for me, it has one of the best chorus we ever written. You know, I was doing that. It's more of a power metal sky. It's more of a power metal, almost sing along chorus, which is not very typical for Moonspell. I was afraid that Pedro would cut that last note, but when I sung that very spontaneously in our rehearsal room, still, he said, "Oh, that this is great because it really takes people. It's really emotional." in the way. And then the songs also grow in us. And I think nowadays I'm entertaining the thought this our second single will be um, Across Your Heart. It's coming back. It's coming out on the May 27th. But I think just before the album, we are going to release Great Wolf in the Sky 2 as a single and as a video. I'm trying to have a good idea and find a good financing because we already spent all the money on the 2 first videos. But I think it's a song, especially with the strings from Alicia, it's a song that's going to be very, it's not the obvious single like Far From God maybe, but it's a song that is going to be very close to the Moonspell universe and to the Moonspell fans. I'm pretty sure about it. It's one of my favorite songs from the album. It's that one and another song called Our Freedom to Fall, which is the last, before last song, which was a song that we didn't, well, let's see if this works, but then it really worked, and it's a mixture between almost typo negative and death metal. I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think that Great Wolf in the Sky would be also a great song live. I also love the album cover. I think this is already my favorite Moonspell album cover. I know it was painted by Elian Cantor, but it looks almost like a old school painting by Caravaggio, Rubens, Goya. It has all the elements.
Yeah, it could be in a museum, definitely. That's what the first thing I said to Eliran was that I want more than he's great. I mean, he's done everything from My Dying Bride to Psy to Creator to Halloween, but everything, even bands that have these such strong visuals as Halloween or Creator, he always manages to make it Eliran. So he's a very distinctive painter and artist, and definitely he is an artist. And I contacted him back already in 2023, I think. Said, well, I know you're a busy man, so I want to hire you for the new Moonspell cover, but I don't know where it's coming out. So we had a long process where I had different band names, different album titles, and I was sending him my visual ideas, my mood boards, etc. Because that's the kind of contact I make. Not to be too nosy, but I know what I want to. And then eventually, in the end, when we were already recording the album, we had some demos to send to Eliran. And I was getting concerned because the deadline was approaching. And he sent me this black and white sketch from the final Far From God cover. And he had nothing to do with my ideas. And I love that. I looked at it and I said, well, this is the cover. It was still with this color treatment, which is spectacular and gets him this Caravaggio and Flemish feeling too. And I said, like I looked at the cover and said, I don't know really why I have to process it. And he sent me also a very great explanatory text with it. It wasn't needed, but it did. It's also his style. And I said, this is for me like it's moving. It was nothing that I would think myself, of course, because I'm not Eliran. And it tells a story too. And that's the most important thing. And the story is about estrangement, two lovers, a guillotine, very simple cover, you can look at it like for many hours. It's very hypnotic, even. And then he sent me the color version, and the first draft, it was definitely approved. And I think nowadays it fits so well that it's almost scary, because it's not the cover that people were expecting, not even myself. I would say someone far from God or a cross or, someone praying or kneeling, but not. I think that's great. And it was one of the highlights of this album is the opportunity of working with such an artist. We didn't want all the Moonspell logo on the cover, but we had to. But Eliran did that placement too. But our band edition that we always release a band edition through our web shop doesn't have a logo on the cover. It doesn't say Far From God. It just says on the sticker, and then you take it and then you have the whole cover, because it's those kinds of covers that I almost felt like spoiling it with the Moonspell logo and the title of the album, because it's so beautiful.
Beautiful painting and very symbolic. I also like the twist on this cover because at first sight it looks like a window, but then when you closer you see the guillotine, and this changes the perspective.
It's very subtle. The guillotine really adds the danger and the estrangement because guillotine separated the head of people from their body. It's a very symbolic thing for lovers. You know, you get to die by guillotine wasn't just death penalty, was just it was also dehumanizing. It was also to separate your head, to show your head, because it's the head controls the body, is where the brain resides and where the brain lives. So at the beginning, actually, I saw the guillotine, and then there was some changing in the rope to make it a little bit more subtle. And I think that's really the key element of the cover. It's beautiful, but just that small detail. I think that's what separates record covers from art, really. And I think that element, that thing that shouldn't be there, but it is there, and that takes all the attention, and it's just a small detail. I think that's reserved to the great masters, and I think Elinan, as far as record covers go, I think is number one right now.
Mm. But by the way, that reminds me dialogue from another classic movie, The Tenant by Roman Polanski, and
All right.
there's a scene where he says, "Well, if someone cuts my arm off, I could say this is me, this is my arm. If someone cuts my legs off, I would say this is me, this is my leg. But if someone cuts my head off, do I say this is me, this is my head, or this is me, this is my body?"
Well, that's true. That's very interesting and very symbolic too, because you know, when you go and you have people in the cover, you know, and Eliran has this realistic style also about him, even when he paints monsters, you know. But for Moonspell, when you listen to the music, he felt it was very authentic, very organic, very made by humans in a time that a lot of people rely on technology and in formulas. He told me that we were speaking about true feelings, you know, and I think that's the true feeling. And when it comes to the symbol of love, it's the heart, but it's love is not in the heart, it's in the head, it's in the senses, it's in the brain, really. So when you cut off, when the head is cut off, when you're decapitated, it's like it's truly of course you die, you can also die with a shot in the heart, but it's truly symbolic of your that you're not a person anymore, that you are not in control anymore, not even of your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one more thing I want to ask you. A couple of years ago, you played at Mystic Festival, and after this show, you said that it was the hardest gig of your life in 30 years. What happened at the Mystic Festival in three?
Well, I had a stomach problem. I had a bacteria, and I gained a lot of weight because of that. So I was having health issues. People were very nice. I was very well treated. I finished the show, but I couldn't stand. I just couldn't sing. I don't know why. So I was rushed to emergency in Poland, and then I had to take a plane to Portugal, and had to go to the hospital to fix with the antibiotics and intravenous, etc. So it was a bad health moment. It was caused by a lot of stress too, and the usual run of life. People were very attentive. We share it on the social networking, not because I wanted to share, but because a lot of people were saying that I had a drug problem. Also the internet. So we said we had to make an explanation. But since then, I made a diet. I lost almost 20 kilos. I refrained myself from a little bit more from alcohol and eating, and I cured myself. I did all the exams. I'm 51 too, so I did the colonoscopy, the stomach, everything. And I have to say, my health has never been better, and it never happened to me again. So I look forward to it's like personal justice to come back to Mystic Festival, especially, even though we are playing Castle Party this time in Poland, the more Gothic festival, which will fit very well with our new album. So I can also take this out of my brain in a way, because you always like to be fit for people that have paid the ticket, and the room was full. It was a strange day because when we arrived, there was someone trying to censor the behemoth gig, and then something break down on the main stage. We had to go to the club. So and then what happened to me was a very strange day for a lot of people there back then in the missing. But it's a great festival, and I hope to come back, and this time in total shape. Yeah.
Absolutely, I'm glad that you well. And but this is also a reminder that touring is a very hard thing, and most people don't realize that you have to be fit. And when you moving all the time, you are exposed to all the infections, stress, tiredness, and so on.
Well, it doesn't really bothered me when I was younger. My first tour was at 21, so I toured for 30 years. So, but when you age, you don't have to be an asshole about it, but you have also to see that your health is a bit more limited, and you're more vulnerable, and your immune system is a bit down. So you have to really take care of yourself. And I'm not saying this as a self-help or go to yoga or go to Pilates, but at a certain age, if you want to do a couple more years on this, you really have to, be hard on yourself. And for me, I walk, I do hiking, I go to the gym 3 times a week. I try to eat and drink healthy, because what matters the most for me, it's the show, and not everything else that I could have done, because I've done everything in 30 years. A lot of things has happened. So now it's time for a newfound peace, and also to, like I was saying in the last question, to honor this privilege. We came from Portugal. It wasn't really sure that we will make it into the scene. There's not a lot of Portuguese bands. There's some more now. Getty is going very well, fortunately. But so for me, being in Moonspell and what happened to Moonspell was always a privilege. And I never wanted to defraud people's expectations when it comes to this. Like, I'm sick, I'm drunk, I'm hangover on stage, because they pay money. They pay more and more money, because nowadays it's so expensive to go to a gig, to buy a T-shirt, to buy a beer, etc. So it should be a time of celebration, and not a time of seeing someone out of shape, or too heavy on stage, or singing like shit. So since then, Mystic Fest was a kind of a wake-up call for me, and I started to take care more of myself, my body, my head, my brain, and also my voice, by practicing, etc. And nowadays, I don't have any problems like I had on tours. After the third show, I was like, but not anymore. It was just a question of, there's no secret, there's no formula, there's no advertisement. I'm not an influencer. But one thing, it's a change of heart, a change of mentality. And when you're aging, and when you are used to see yourself on the picture since you were 18 or 19, it's like the portrait of Dorian Gray. But instead of finding it in the end, we find it every day. Sometimes I get very harsh messages saying, "Oh, time doesn't forgive anyone. Look at he was with the long hair." This kind of hate messages. But age also makes you wise and humble, that you cannot find with health. There's things that are really above you and do not depend on your will, but can depend on your decisions. So right now I'm in a very good place. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sure you have other interviews, so I won't keep you any longer.
No problem.
So thank you for the interview. It's been great talking to you, and good luck.
Thanks
Hope
for
to
your
see
time.
you in Bolków in Castle Party Festival very
All right.
soon.
See you there then. Thank you for the interview.
See you.
All the
Bye.
best. Bye-bye.